You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. On July 17, 1791, a tragic event known as the Champ de Mars massacre occurred in Paris during the heart of the French Revolution. This happened right after a decision was made by the National Constituent Assembly on July 15th, declaring that King Louis XVI would keep his throne, but as part of a constitutional monarchy. This decision was quite controversial, especially since just a month prior, the king and his family had tried to escape France in what's known as the Flight to Varennes. In response, leaders advocating for a republic were quick to express their disagreement. One of the key figures against the monarchy was Jacques-Pierre Brissot, who edited and wrote for Le Patriote Français. He also led the Comité de Recherche of Paris and was instrumental in drafting a petition that called for the king's removal. On the day of the massacre, a huge gathering of around 50,000 people came together at the Champ de Mars to show their support by signing this petition, with about 6,000 actually doing so. However, an incident involving two individuals who were found hiding, allegedly to spy on women, escalated when they were executed by the crowd. This led to Jean-Sylvain Bailly, the mayor of Paris, to declare martial law. Leaders like Georges Danton and Camille Desmoulins led the crowd, which had dispersed, but then returned in even greater numbers and with more determination later that afternoon. When they began to throw stones at the National Guard, led by Lafayette, the situation took a violent turn. After warning shots failed to disperse the crowd, the National Guard fired directly into it. The exact number of casualties remains unclear, with estimates of the dead ranging from a dozen to 50. This event marked a significantly tragic turn in the French Revolution, highlighting the deep divisions and the intense struggle for power and reform in France at the time. When King Louis XVI and his family made a break for it and headed to Varennes, it really stirred up trouble. The people of France felt deeply betrayed and were quite upset with the king. Before this, the National Assembly had gotten wind that the king might try to sneak away. Rumours that Louis was looking to escape the Tuileries Palace started swirling around early in 1791, and this whole situation contributed to a tense episode known as the Day of Daggers on February 28, 1791. The king's escape plan wasn't exactly a masterclass in subtlety, and people working in the palace started suspecting something was up. These suspicions eventually made their way into the newspapers. The Marquis de Lafayette, trying to quell the rumours, even went as far as to stake his life on the claim that the king wasn't planning to flee. Well, that turned out to be a big mistake, because the king did indeed try to make a run for it. In a bit of desperate damage control, Lafayette and the Assembly spread the word that the king hadn't fled, but had been kidnapped. Eventually, the king and his family were caught and brought back, and the Assembly came to the conclusion that it was best to keep the king involved in the government as long as he played ball with the Constitution. By the time of the massacre, there was already a rift within the Third Estate. Workers were livid about workshops closing down, which meant jobs were disappearing, leaving many out of work. The skilled journeymen were also fuming because their wages hadn't seen a bump since the revolution kicked off. The king's botched escape attempt only added fuel to the fire, intensifying the existing tensions. The massacre that followed was the boiling over of tensions, triggered by various groups reacting differently to a decree by the Constituent Assembly. The Cordeliers Club, a group with populist leanings, decided to drum up a petition for a protest, initially with the Jacobins' nod of approval. However, Robespierre suggested the Jacobins withdraw their support. Undeterred, the Cordeliers shifted gears towards a more radical approach, pushing for a republic and organizing a protest to get more signatures for their cause. From what we know about the petition and the makeup of the crowd based on the bodies counted, it was mostly folks from the poorer parts of Paris, some likely unable to read. The aim seemed to be getting representation for Paris as a whole, rather than favoring any particular group. After the tragedy, it seemed like the end of the road for the Republican activists. 200 people involved were arrested, and many others had to find a place to hide. Their meeting stopped, and the bold newspapers that supported their cause stopped printing. But this setback didn't keep them down for long. Lafayette, known for his heroics in the American Revolutionary War, was once a beacon of hope for many in France. They expected him to steer the French Revolution towards a positive direction. He had a significant role in the first festival of the Federation on the Field of Mars, exactly a year earlier, commemorating the storming of the Bastille in 1889. Yet, Lafayette's image took a nosedive after the massacre. The public no longer saw him as a friend or a leader once he ordered his troops to fire on the crowd, leading to a sharp decline in his influence in Paris. Although he continued to lead French armies until August 1792, his previously undisclosed support for the king during an attack on the royal residence forced him to flee to Belgium, where he was captured by Austrians on August 19, 1792. In 1793, Bailly, once the mayor of Paris, faced execution. One of the accusations against him was that he played a role in causing the massacre. A tragic event has occurred on the Champ de Mars, known as the Field of Federation, which has now been tarnished by violence. The altar of the fatherland, intended to be a sign of unity, has been desecrated with the blood of both men and women. The arising question is, what implications does this event have for the future of liberty? Opinions are divided. Some believe that liberty has been severely undermined by the strength of a counter-revolution, while others contend that it has emerged stronger, vindicated and consolidated through these events. Let us examine the contrasting viewpoints. From one perspective, the majority of the National Assembly, municipal authorities, and various authors maintain that Paris faces a threat from lawless individuals who are purported to be backed by external forces. These individuals are accused of disturbing the peace, assaulting and even murdering members of the National Guard, and attempting to assassinate the Commandant General. It's alleged that they congregated at the Champ de Mars with the specific intention of causing disorder. Seen from this angle, the stern measures enacted by the Paris municipality might appear to be justified to avert further damage to the general public. Conversely, if those assembled at the Champ de Mars were not dangerous felons but peaceful citizens and their families, who fell victim during this occurrence, then the enforcement of martial law and the ensuing violence are viewed as egregious wrongs, indicating a profound menace to liberty and a move towards counter-revolution. The setting of this sorrowful incident is the Champ de Mars, a vast plain centered around the altar of the fatherland, designed with slopes for easier access. Troops made their entrance from various locations, and upon their entry, confusion quickly spread among the over 15,000 individuals assembled. Many initially mistook the soldiers' gunfire for blanks intended as a warning. However, the realization that live rounds were being used sparked widespread panic, causing the crowd to scatter, leaving behind only the most courageous or perhaps the most optimistic near the altar. This last stand, tragically, culminated in the loss of numerous lives, including men, women, and even a child, mercilessly slain at the very symbol of their unity and hope, the altar of the fatherland. On July 17, 1791, at the Champ de Mars, French citizens gathered to put their names down on a significant statement, which said the following in a nutshell: "We, the people of France who hold true power, believe that when the safety of the people is at stake, it is our right to share our thoughts to help shape the decisions of those who represent us. There is no issue more pressing than addressing the King's recent abandonment of his duties." The recent decree from July 15th fails to address what should be done with Louis XVI. Given the urgency, it's vital we quickly determine what his future should be, basing our decision on his actions. Louis XVI had agreed to fulfill his royal responsibilities and to uphold the Constitution, yet he has left his post, openly rejected the Constitution he vowed to protect, evident from his own written and signed declaration, and tried to immobilize the government and overthrow the Constitution with the aid of men currently on trial for this very effort. His betrayal, his fleeing and his objection, not to mention the other unlawful acts that came before, during and after these events, signal a clear abandonment of his constitutional role. The National Assembly, recognizing this, has already begun to act by taking over the executive power, suspending the King's authority, and placing him under arrest. Any new promises from Louis XVI to follow the Constitution can't be seen as reliable, given his history of deception and conspiracy. Finally, giving the role of running the country back to someone who has proven to be a traitor, a perjurer, and a runaway, would not only insult the dignity of our great nation, but also go against our collective interest. Therefore, we demand that the Assembly recognize Louis XVI's abandonment of his role on June 21st as official, and start the process to appoint his successor in line with the Constitution. We also declare that we won't acknowledge Louis XVI as our king unless the majority of the nation wishes to overturn this demand. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.